Keys to Avoid Fear and Anger by Daryl Kravitz. 2020. There are two spiritual paths. Either of these directions we make in life is a choice. Sometimes the progression of a journey is prevented by baggage. I call this condition travelers. They talk about doing great things, but they never get off the dock. Their logic is hindered by fear. Well, if I go in this direction, what's to happen? Fear stalls the journey. It will either be two ways. It will prevent you from making a decision. Or because of indecision, it will stop you dead in your tracks. Or make you contemplate so much in lack of decision that you go nowhere. What causes this? It can be baggage from your past. Some is self-inflicted, while others were inflicted on you. These conditions prevents you from walking effectively forward in life. If you can't walk, then you can't run. The more baggage you carry, the harder it is to achieve your goals. Now, anger is different. It is based on emotions rather than feelings. What anger does is it cuts off learning. It deafens the ears and wells up like a volcano inside you, so you can't hear knowledge or learn from the experience. Reason goes out the window, as well as intelligence and knowledge. Now, holy rage is different. I know this is the right path. Why are you messing with me? Now, there's another part of this whole baggage that you carry. And breaking a cycle to any pattern of failure begins with awareness that there is a pattern of failure. Another is acceptance of limitation is one. We're talking about the obstacles to a goal. 3 things that are constantly used against us. 1. Past failures. 2. Apprehension of action. And 3. Anger. The past is remembering past hurts and happiness. There are 2 things that has a lasting effect on memories, which in turn can work for you or against you. The first is the greatest joys in one's life are remembered. The second are traumas of pain. Both are forces. They can impede a journey to life's pursuits and goals. A person that has been abused in their life statistically by learned behavior in turn becomes an abuser. I was abused, so I'm not going to inflict what I went through on others. So one is a positive action, where the past is used as reference to what not to do, as opposed to permeate future actions. So a child learns from the influences of their youth. Weakness is where other people control and sell you their godless religion. We all sell our own religion of sorts. We will either sell them on our faith or misery. So when we talk to someone, we want to either control, help, manipulate, or educate. The more accomplishments that we have is the pivotal point of responsibility to help and teach others. We can sometimes internally be our worst enemy. The self-definition of who we are inside is shown in our actions, our words, and our mannerisms. To say that someone cannot change is fear of choice. Any pursuit different than the conditioning from our past hurts will make the journey to change difficult, but not impossible. Stacking the positives will reinforce the ease of moving forward in life. Okay, stacking is one way that in simple terms will be explained in a moment. For stacking is a way for positive reinforcement to enact a change. For example, a square is a good action in the past that made someone feel happy. A triangle is hurt from your past that occurred to you or inflicted by you, and a circle is an accomplishment that occurred in your past. The choices of stacking are in its awareness. If I stack squares, I will make more squares because I am taking that memory of that action and duplicating it over and over again, causing more positive actions. If I stack hurts or triangles, I will make more triangles. I will no longer be the victim, but I will inflict pain. So what we stack in effect becomes what we stack more. Accomplishments through the stacking techniques can be changed to a positive action. The realization of what we are stacking becomes a new journey. If it is a new journey, stacking accomplishments gives us definition of success. So if we have a mindset of awareness of past successes, we use those as steps going forward to our achievable dreams. Is it not easier to say I can do this? I have had other accomplishments before, and I will do this again. Fear will prevent us from seeing the awareness of accomplishments from past actions. Anger will topple the stack. If it was this easy, then everyone would be successful. The fact is, there is a weeding out process. It is something that mostly overlooked in our self-examination. The weeding process begins with fact versus fiction. What this means is that in taking a self-inventory, you must look with a critical but honest eye of who you were, who you're striving to be, and what to avoid. The honesty is crucial. You may have been the worst person before, but that is not who you are or want to be. So therefore, there is a higher opportunity to change once you're aware that you need to change certain habits. Truth can never be nothing more than fact, but sometimes we lie to ourselves making a falsehood as truth. This forms an inner conflict for change to a positive direction. Fear, as stated before, will prevent further stacking. And this is extremely important, the awareness of stacked accomplishments. So fear can blind. Pride is another force, and love is the strongest of all forces. For love of self can fuel change. Love for others can change the world. Take an example of the forces that I just mentioned, and let's say, for example, that each emotion or element is a season. So pride would be spring, summer would be love, anger would be winter, and fear would be fall. Let's take each one and break it down to its core components. We'll begin with spring, which is pride. Pride is spring because it grows. It has life. It has vibrancy. It is the core of confidence. But too much growth too fast prevents us from being aware of the other growths around us. Summer or love is a warmth, a season which can translate to compassion and forgiveness. Summer is already established growth, and the beauty is evident, for it grows slower. Fall or fear is the breaking down of all of the beauty of love that has been established. Fear will destroy the beauty of a garden, the beauty of a memory, or taint it. The one important thing about memories before we talk about winter is that memories are never perfect, and in time a traumatic event will hide in the subconscious and only appear in faded blurbs or flashes that can be deceiving. Many stories, many lives have been changed by the perception of an event that has changed. For example, 3 people share the same event in the present. The truth does not change, however, in time its perception changes. Those 3 people meet 5 years later, and each of them will have a different memory, a different perception of that memory. Has the truth changed? No. Its perception has been muted. If it is a happy memory, it will be embellished because it's a happy feeling associated with that memory. If it is a traumatic event, it will take on a darker tone in its memory. Memories determine our progression forward, backward, or keep us standing still. The song Glory Days is a perfect example, for it tells a story of people that live in the past, reliving the past over and over again, rather than making new memories of positive progression forward. If we forget the past, it opens up more time to move forward in a positive and successful happy existence. Stacking, however, positive memories of accomplishments is a way of training the subconscious. The subconscious mind does not have the mechanism to differentiate fantasy from reality. It understands what makes a person happy or sad. The subconscious will use the reference library of the past to reinforce negative behavior or positive behavior to move forward or backward. This is what it understands. The subconscious mind will reinforce memories to the conscious mind based on what the conscious mind dictates. It can be lofty aspirations or programmed to previous failures. To say someone cannot change in a second is to believe that there are no heroes in this world. You could have a soldier that is not the best soldier. Yet in that second, when a grenade is thrown from the enemy, he dives on the grenade. The action forward to save and protect his platoon makes him a hero. Was he a hero before? Or is it the one act of courage that makes him a hero? I say anyone can be a hero or a villain, but it begins inside. The mechanisms of conditioning as explained begins with one's perceptions internally, rather than external forces that modify or change behavior. Frustration's another degree of anger. Frustration is taking the emotion to test the solvency of an act of progression forward. Just as we stack accomplishments or good things, the subconscious can, with frustration, put things in disarray. For self-doubt is more than self-defeat. We, in effect, become our own villain. Unfortunately, a lot of people have no idea that they're doing a tango or dance. This weaving back and forth is where frustration is born. We accomplish, then we self-destruct. We accomplish and self-destruct yet again. This is how indecision has affected the subconscious. The simplest thought is by action in a positive direction. We now have given ourselves a choice. Once we go past fear or phobia, we are in control of it, and it is not in control of us. The perfect example is someone who has a fear of needles. Though the event is just a pinprick, a small pain, the mind can make it a traumatic event, so in effect the trauma of fear of the needle becomes more painful than the actual action to take place. Why is this? Because we stack the negative, or the terror, rather than the realization of the truth that this process has to occur. What we think of becomes what we speak of. What we speak of becomes who we are, and what we teach those around us. If we talk about ourselves, then we are more internal and want to express who we are as a perimeter or a showcase, which exemplifies the opposite affect of being insecure. Confidence is in talking to others about them. A mutual exchange as opposed to reinforcing what doesn't need to be reinforced. The one thing that I never understood is why the pursuit of knowledge isn't as strong in society as it once was. Of course, there are pockets of many people that have a thirst for knowledge. For those who have fear to it, or abhorrence to it, I pose this simple recommendation, as we are always the one who determines our own actions. By listening to knowledge, two things will happen. You will either learn something or reconfirm your own knowledge on that topic. By listening to knowledge, you win in both regards, because it reinforces what you already know, which gives you a confidence platform, or you learn something that can benefit you. Any change begins with a recalibration of the definition of success. Success can be many things. It can be as simple as writing a song, painting, a painting, making a sale, or getting the relationship of your dreams. Our definition of success is determined by how high we raise the bar. The one thing that prevents people that have fear of success is not actually that they can't do it. Some are afraid that once they do succeed, that they're going to have to succeed again. Any progression in life has no guarantees. Confidence in oneself is determined by controlling the emotions and weigh them and balance with facts. To better emphasize this point, I call this the bus. The bus. There is a bus that we drive without hitting the gas pedal. This bus can be painted in many different colors, but it still is a bus. It can be colored with, I can't do this. I can't write a story. I can't paint a painting. I can't tell the truth. I can't believe this is possible to change. I can't paint prevents us from moving forward. So in affect, I can't is the bus that we paint with different affirmations to failure. There are other vehicles which we also paint called I can. I can overcome these obstacles. I can succeed. I can write a story. Or I can learn. I can overcome fear. This vehicle will always have the gas pedal down and moving in a positive direction. There are certain tolls in our I can vehicle where we have to stop and pay. The first toll, which sometimes is the most difficult, is humility. To learn new information from others. The second toll is to not let obstacles or lack of desire to impact the desires of the heart by recalibrating. We are stacking a positive action that will be reinforced subconsciously and impact your life for the good. There will be others on the road that will try to sway you to sit in their I can't bus. You can fill in obviously the rest of that, because some of the truths in simple sayings have their merit, such as misery, loves company. Jealousy of successful people is one of the hardest things sometimes to deal with. This is how, in our vehicle, I can do this runs out of gas. There are other ways the engine overheats if we take the baggage of past fears, past failures, and all of the negative emotions with us. We try to move on the highway of success. If the vehicle is overloaded with these weights, it taxes the engine, causing it to overheat. The vehicle can no longer function. It only needs to cool down in order for us to continue our journey of success. Simple goals create lasting change. To act with a simple goal of to write 4 lines describing a tree easy to do. And what does that do? It forms a platform for stacking those 4 lines. I can become 8, it can become a story. But the fact of the matter is, this simple goal will bring you to the next once enough positive simple goals are obtained. It forms a transformation in the subconscious, rewiring the conscious to make what once was impossible probable. Getting back to our vehicle example, if in the world we were content with riding a 3-wheel or a tricycle, we will be riding a tricycle for the rest of our life. Now a tricycle has 3 wheels. It balances our weight. Our confidence of moving forward is established. A 2-wheel bicycle is now replaced with training wheels. Once the confidence is again restored, the training wheels come off and we attempt to ride a 2-wheeler. To say that we will never fall on a 2-wheel bike is a delusion, of course. We will fall maybe once or twice, or maybe more than that, but we get back on the bike and progress to a motorcycle or a car. So, what we have achieved sometimes in the simplest examples of everyday society. We can stack and reacquaint ourselves with the simplest of accomplishments to strive forward to success. Some people that only feel that they can ride a 3-wheeler and are afraid to take the next step. Those are the ones who sit on the I can't bus. But see, positive reinforcement can be found in the simplest places. It is awareness and perception that determines progression. The one thing that I've noticed in life is that we could be our worst enemy. How we do this is quite simple. If we want to fail, we know all the doors and have all the keys to all the skeletons of the closets of our experiences. We can open them at will. So if we want to feel sad, that we have no purpose or direction, we know exactly how to fail. The interesting thing also is that certain people strive to fail when success is an easier path. I use the past as a reference library. Though it has its horror section, its motivational, and its success section, it is only there for the purpose of learning what works, what doesn't work. What has worked in the past and how to use those formulas to stack more accomplishments without sacrificing integrity is the goal. Let's address another point of how our vehicle of success runs out of gas. We don't fill the tank enough. If we don't reinforce positive behaviors and let negative ones fill the tank, it will always be empty. We decide what we put in the tank. If we have a large amount of excess baggage from our past emotional imbalance or fear of any other obstacle, we focus on the obstacle rather than the journey. We will think that we're on the I can vehicle of success, to find ourselves in the I can't bus, just the choices that we make before the action permeates our decision will in affect decide if we will win or lose. It has been said in martial arts that the fight is won in the mind before the first punch is thrown. I agree with this, but putting a different perspective on this true statement, confidence in thought becomes accomplishment in action. Fear as well will topple or stall action before the decision to create. Indecision, thus no decision. If the mindset is fear, there is no progression. Positive action comes first. Start stacking accomplishments from your past, write down as many as you can. Doing this, you are setting the stage, polishing that vehicle of success which can make the impossible journey possible. Anticipation of obstacles is wisdom, for just as in a chess game you must anticipate obstacles against, but the focus is always the progression forward to win. The giant and the ant. Perception can create its own fantasy reinforcement, what we perceive and believe we can achieve within reason. For example, an ant in perspective, be it delusion, fear, and apprehension, the ant can become a giant. Focus comes in degrees of perspective. With a magnifying glass, an ant becomes larger than its true form. Once we take and realize the truth. For example, back in my sales career, the first obstacle that I had to overcome was walking into complete strangers' business, introducing a product. I can tell you at first it was terrifying. In my mind, all of these rushing thoughts from my past of people yelling at me. They are going to yell at me. Kick me out. They are going to say nasty things to me. It was a job I needed to maintain my household, so I bit my mental lip and went forward. To my surprise, people were nice. Very nice, in fact. And as I made other calls, it got easier. I learned that I, in effect, had created a giant out of an ant. Fantasy, fiction, and delusion. Fantasy is a realization of a plausible genre of thinking. Fantasy, for the most part, is escapism. Delusion, on the other hand, is destructive hindrance or cloaking of the truth. Fiction is the start of the other two. How this occurs is based on the denial of the truth. How this occurs as a subconscious defense mechanism is to protect the psyche. There are many reasons for this. The most common are physical trauma, sexual abuse, acts of violence, or mental abuse. By taking the burden of these horrible experiences to maintain the strength in ourselves, we will do one of two things. It will be tucked in the subconscious mind, replayed in actions as mentioned previously, or will be a platform for denial of the events that took place. So fiction, in a sense, is denial of the truth. This is where fantasy and delusion begin. Fantasy is an almost dreamlike portal to a surreal, happy, wonderful world, which is fine for a time, because the reality is that our definition of happiness and contentment do not come from fantasy, but the realization of truth, also known as non-fiction. Delusion, on the other hand, is the replaying of past hurts, or fear of their occurrence again. Delusion is vast, just as the colors of the I can't bus. It cloaks our perception of reality by making us dwell on obtuse, reckless self-destruction. But in effect, we are only playing the same recording from our past. An example of this would be if I was hurt in a relationship or abused in one. A delusion would be that I'm going to get hurt again. There's always going to be doubt, and those doubts become delusion. We prepare to subconsciously begin a process to replay the same failure. It is disguised, but it is the same thing. Another example would be non-verbal communication can be the perceptions of an attack when none exists. The problem with delusion, the problem with fantasy, and the core of it is easily to explain. Magic, for the most part, occurs in the distraction, distracting the audience with lights, colors, beautiful girls in scantily tight clothes so we do not to see the full picture. So the magic occurs, and in truth, it is a trick. Understand magic. Trick. So what do we understand in this? If we understand that magic can be failure or delusion, once we realize that it is a trick, sleight of hand. If we take the magic out of the trick, we see it as a mechanism of deception. In a sense, delusion and fantasy are tricks. These tricks achieve the goal of entertaining failure. But now that you know that it is a trick, there is no more magic. So delusions and fantasy become what they are once more. Distraction and replaying of past failures or hurts. Still the same trick that we need to walk away from. Now fantasy does have its place in dreams of success. It is the dark fantasies that perpetuate failure, is what was addressed previously. The next topic heading is called Break the Broken Record Already. Break the broken record already. By breaking the broken record means exactly that replaying failure over and over again with negative reinforcement begins a never-ending cycle that has no end. How we do this is that we use the ultimate power that we all have inside of us, which is choice. I say go to an imaginary music store and choose a new record entitled I Can Move Forward in Success. That is the one you should play over and over again for that record, or recording will bring you to greater aspirations, stronger confidence, and fulfillment of your dreams. For those who have fear of success, I can give you this bit of advice which I found to be very helpful. Become successful for others, not for yourself. Doing this, it makes it easier, because you're not focused internally but outwardly. So find the core of yourself outside, because if you do for others, you'll strive that much more and it will make it easier. The cold plunge previously, I had mentioned, and for reiteration, I feel that this is necessary to repeat this. Actually did happen. I call it the cold plunge. While working at a health club and having bought a year membership, the first inclination was to see what workout toys were available. So I tried the sauna, the steam room, and some of the equipment. A little bit past the pool was a curious sight. It was steps going down to water about neck high with a railing. So my curiosity got the best of me, and I put my foot in the water. The water was freezing more than freezing. I took my foot out of it, but then I said to myself, am I strong enough to walk down those stairs? I said to myself, I'm going to do this. I'm going to walk into that ice-cold water, knowing I'm going to freeze count to 10 and come back out. Now the first time, I have to admit, I walked really fast down those stairs and counted extremely fast, probably the fastest I've ever counted before in my life. The water was cold. Upon making a hasty retreat, I found something which I didn't notice before, that I actually faced a fear. More importantly, the realization was a physical endurance. Every time I worked out, I could not wait eventually to get to the ice water and the count. 10 seconds became longer. It eventually went to 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and a minute. Why did I do this? I felt it would help me in overcoming all fears by facing fear head-on. Now for you, this could be putting the water on ice cold in the shower and tightening your body and enduring for 5 seconds, just the act of proving strength to yourself. It leaves a lasting impression in your conscious mind of the controlled success and have the subconscious follow suit. It trains the subconscious mind with the desire to achieve past fear. Confidence comes from accomplishment. The more accomplishments, the more confidence. Patterns and clothing. What we wear is how we choose to dress ourselves, but in a psychological standpoint, we have many choices. We can wear a suit of failure, a gown of pain, a shirt of fear, or pants of anger. How we dress ourselves is how we are perceived by others. In this sense, dress for success really is dressing for success. If we are confident in ourselves, it makes us feel stronger, and people will perceive us that way. I say, the only thing that you should wear is confidence, awareness, and truth. Some people have different remembrances associated with colors, patterns, and styles. This can be a number of different things, but it needs to be addressed to be understood. Patterns are reinforcements of disassociated behavior. For example, if I wore a black shirt in the past and did something evil or dishonest, the thought of wearing a black shirt again, even though I'm a different person, would be a challenge. If I associate it that way, it goes back to perception once more. For how we dress ourselves, we will either reinforce change or digress to failure, delusion, and dark fantasy. This can be anything from a song on the radio that evokes a dark memory, the appearance of an individual that reminds them of another. The main thing to be aware of is fear begins with doubt. Fear as a survival tactic is the balance or the good part of fear. Cautionary fear is important for survival. However, fear that impedes success, fear that cloaks truth, fear that replays over and over again through your physiological clothing you wear, it all boils down to the same thing. If you've never worn a suit of confidence, cold plunge. Try it on if a song reminds you of a past pain. Listen to it just as the fear of needles mentioned previously. The trauma is more damaging than the actual fear that occurs. I'm not saying that everything is so easy to do. Some will be, some won't. The progression forward in any pursuit is to have obtainable goals. Obtainable goals is to say, don't bite off more than you can chew. One thing that is the most important to be aware of is something that I have seen and experienced one time or another in my life. Let's say that I went to walk in the ice-cold water and I failed. If I failed, it could have caused me not to do it again. But the fact of the matter is, one event is not a lifestyle. One mistake is not your future journey. Success is built on overcoming failures till your worst failure is other people's highest success. So don't be afraid of failure. If you don't achieve your goal for just as learning to swim, learning to ice skate, learning to write, or learning to love it, begins with the little successes, with the little failures. Never let the little failures become giants when in actuality they are nothing more than ants. The beauty of life itself is in the taste of happiness and joy, not only internally but what you bring to the world. Self-absorption is social failure, for the balance between internal acceptance and external expression is a balance. The imaginary coffin, the great thing about universal truths, is that the knowledge, just as a joke that you may hear 20 different variations, is still funny. Universal truths, as an example, would be like this. You can't judge a book by its cover. Why? Because people do. A man can walk into a Jaguar dealership with dirty sneakers, shorts, and a smelly t-shirt and be perceived as a bum. Actually, he just got off a construction site and just wanted to buy 2 Jaguars, one for his wife and one for himself. So, you can't judge a book by its cover. I'd like to share this insight with you. It was suggested to have an imaginary funeral, to take an empty casket and put all of my hurts and pains of my past in that coffin. So taking all of these frustrations, angers, and hurts inflicted upon me, to put them in this coffin and close the lid. Then dig with a shovel the hole for the coffin. Put dirt on it, then put a gravestone and make my peace. This is actually the byproduct of a quote that I had written some time ago, which is imaginary sharks can bite as hard as real ones do. What that means is that we can bring solidity to a fear that becomes a stronger entity against ourselves that can hurt us in our imagination. We can create forces against ourselves that don't exist but have power over us. In affect, burying your past, hurts and pains in a coffin, covering it with dirt, and walking away from that graveyard, you have taken power over those imaginary forces that you've given skin and bone to. Subconsciously, you've made an action to focus on the present and future, not living in the past. Behavior and benefit. Behavior is actually another word for repetitive action, while benefit is a reward system that we can use to change unwanted behavior. How we do this is by rewarding ourselves for positive change. I highly recommend taking once a day a mental vacation, which your mind just drifts, which releases the stress and loosens the tension. It gives your mind a chance to rest. In the same principle, by rewarding yourself for positive actions forward, we in turn reward ourselves ongoing. An example of this would be, if I do a responsible action, one that I don't want to do, but is necessary to do, I reward myself with watching a movie or doing music or what have you. So in affect, I've established that responsibilities are more important than failure. If I do these things that I don't want to do, that I have a reward for that action in a positive way. So you're basically training your mind to accept responsibility before pleasure. I can tell you from experience that creativity is probably the most gratifying opiate on the planet, but equally is accomplishment. They both are very addictive. Many times while working on a specific project for a specific goal, my reward is, if I finish the project I'm working on, I get to start on a new idea. Inspiration begins. The process, completion, makes the idea into an entity. For example, if you have 20 incomplete songs, they are not songs, they are the start of a songs. They are not a complete entity until there is a completion. It then becomes something. An unfinished painting is not a painting, sometimes creative, or not. We have these incomplete works in ourselves. Fears we haven't faced, hurts we've never made peace with, desires we've never fulfilled. And the reason for this is the one other opiate. It's the most easiest, the simplest, but yet the most damaging failure. Failure is easy, but it can also be just as addicting as inspiration. It is because it's easy not to do anything. It's easy to be distracted. Another example would be the never finished soup. Let's say, for example, you're cooking and making a homemade soup. You start putting your seasoning in the soup, and in doubt you put too much garlic. Then you try to counter the garlic with sugar, but then you put too much sugar. Then you have to counterbalance with salt. Then it becomes too salty. So then you need to add more water. Then you decide, I'm going to put more seasoning. So in effect, indecision is like this. Because the soup will never be completed, because there will always be more ingredients to add. Because of insecurity and doubt, I say walk away from the soup. If it's a lousy soup, you can always start again with a new one. You can always create a new soup with the wisdom of what not to put in the soup. Another example of this would be the misplaced character. I have met several writers in the span of years that create a character. They put this character in a story that doesn't fit. They justify it, but it doesn't work. And they keep trying to fit this charterer into the story. Again, if it doesn't work, move on and accept it as truth. Maybe that character is for another story. The truth is, professionalism or maturity in any given pursuit is knowing when a particular project is complete. The grass is always greener, or am I the one that's green? The subject for this topic is the lessons to achieve self-worth. Self-worth will never be predicated on envy or jealousy. By focusing on someone else's success to such a high degree, leaves no room for your own. The first recommendation is not to be jealous of other people that are successful, but to learn how they became successful. By learning other people's successes as a school, you learn what they have done to succeed, and what you have not done that you need to change. Yet, in a sense, jealousy is pride. Envy is pride. How it is pride? It is very simple. You are too proud to think that anybody can be more successful than you. How this occurs is by taking and measuring your success against others that are more successful. There will always be someone more successful, more talented. The main problem that artists have, and doctors have, is they feel the empowerment of a given power and put themselves above the masses through pride. These individuals, you will find, will put themselves above other artists, even though of equal caliber. They make self-gratification a religion. To avoid this, it's very simple. Focus on your own success and learning from those who have succeeded, not as worshipping them as a deity, but to accept that they have achieved and applaud their accomplishments. Humility, by its definition, can mean different things. Humility, however, is the highest strength. A martial artist of a high-degree black belt does not need to fight. Only in conflict, which he first of all will try to avoid. I refer to have power and not use it, and have self-control is the highest strength, aka humility. How do we find it? What skill set is the way to humility? The answer comes from abandoning insecurity by having self-confidence in oneself, in one's accomplishments is the start. Having self-confidence, you need not to prove your strength. Those who prove strength through forced manipulation, the bully, is the one with the lowest self-esteem. Their lack of confidence they constantly have to reinforce it through forceful action, boastful statements to make themselves feel complete. The way to humility is first to listen to learn. The reed in the wind comes to mind. The wind's force will uproot a tree, while the reed will sway to the currents and not be damaged. This is self-control compared to anger, frustration, and stress. Stress is very important, for stress will take the highest accomplishments and make them distasteful and impede your journey to success. Let me give you an example of this. If you're working on a project and you look at the clock of the deadline, not the focus on the project, the clock becomes more important than the project, which causes stress. Stress can be a large boulder that we carry on our back, or it can be a small pebble that we believe to be a large stone. Relieving stress begins with taking those mentally vacations daily, for we interpret and perceive a different place where we release the tension to look at the project or situation with new eyes. A life example of this was while working 2 jobs paying for the reception hall, living with my fiancés. I found out she was having an affair with my best friend. My emotions got the best of me. I kicked her out of the apt, but then I had no way of paying the rent with my income, so I sat there and cried until I realized that I was postponing the inevitable, because when I stopped crying, the problem would still be there. I wiped the tears and took a proactive stance from a reactive one. In any situation, from business to love, to any creative pursuit. How we approach any situation is based on one or two things: being proactive to solve the problem or reactive to over-emotionalize the problem. Reactive behavior only stalls the process of eventually having to think proactive. So by thinking proactively, rather than thinking reactively, it saves time and helps change the mechanisms internally that can help you move forward faster and higher on the ladder of success. Emotions need to be guarded. Feelings are a totally different animal. We all feel, and feelings are expressed in emotions. It is over-emotion that tips the scale from a proactive stance. Like crimes of passion, theft, and embezzlement are all emotional solutions reactive rather than proactive. Anger will always find a dancing partner. TBC only stalls the process of eventually having to think proactive. So by thinking proactively rather than thinking reactively, it saves time and helps change the mechanisms internally that can help you move forward faster and higher on the ladder of success. Emotions need to be guarded. Feelings are a totally different animal. We all feel, and feelings are expressed in emotions. It is over-emotion that tips the scale from a proactive stance. Like crimes of passion, theft, and embezzlement are all emotional solutions reactive rather than proactive. Anger will always find a dancing partner. TBC.